Oh, all right. Welcome back to PulumiVision. I'm Maddie Stratton. I'm a staff developer advocate here at Pulumi, and
You've got Dan.
I do have Dan. I also have.
You also have someone else? I don't see them.
No, what I do have is I've got. Okay, my Twitch chat did not have the video muted somehow, so I was catching that in my ear because everybody knows I'm so good at Twitch.
It's not like you've ever streamed anything to Twitch before.
Not like I've ever streamed anything to Twitch before.
First timer. It's fine. We all make mistakes.
Yeah. There we go. Okay, so that's muted. That's fine. Anyway, what we're going to be doing today here, we're going to be playing around with a little Datadog and and Pulumi. So as we before we get into this a little bit, before we jump into really getting into stuff, Dan, do you want to maybe give like a little mini spiel about Datadog in case people don't know what it is or never heard of it before?
Yeah, for sure. Well, so hi, Twitch and YouTube and Pulumi fans. My name's Dan. I'm an engineer on the community team at Datadog. So what is Datadog? Well, like a couple of 4 years back when I first joined Datadog, it was relatively straightforward. You could sort of put one slide up and be like, Datadog is a metrics aggregation platform or something like this, right? It was really simple, right? And now I was like, okay, hold on. Let me read to you from the saga of my people, right? So basically what it is it's an observability platform. And it's got a ton of products inside it. So we've got all the good monitoring and, alerting and metrics and dashboards and all that stuff you're probably used to, right? We've got all that. That's fine. And then we've also got a big logs product, right? So aggregating all your logs. It's got a Grok parser built right into it. It's super good. We rub a little machine learning on there. Don't worry about it. And we got some synthetics. We got some real user monitoring. We've got a whole network component now, and there's a whole bunch of stuff too. But at the end of the day, again, it's an observability platform. It's API driven if you want it to be. And that's a lot of what we're going to be touching on today. Isn't that right, Matt?
Yes, all those things. And what we're going to do in addition to configuring some Datadog stuff, we're going to be doing it with Pulumi, which is infrastructure as software. If Pulumi's new to you, welcome. If Pulumi's not new to you, welcome anyway. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to all of our friends who are joining us from all over the place. But what we can do is we're going to use a real programming language. In this case, today, we're going to be using Go. And that is specifically for my buddy Engine, who's always on my streams and saying, how come we don't write anything in Golang? And I'm like, here it is. This is very special for that. So we've got that going on. But you could write your Pulumi programs in TypeScript, in any of the .NET languages, or also in Python. We're going to be doing it in Go today. And one of the fun things about using a full programming language like that is we get fun things like conditionals and loops and packaging and all that fun stuff. So this is not a demo. Okay, we don't have kind of a slick prepared thing going on. So if that's what you're looking for,
I would say we actually have the opposite of that, Matt.
We have the least what is the opposite of slick?
What is that's a very good question. Rough, I guess.
It's not rough, it's frictiony. It's very
friction like viscous
sandpaper. Yes. This is very it's like
a viscous demo.
Yes. This stream is coarse grained sandpaper. But what I thought we would do is poke around a little bit in the registry page for the Datadog provider for Pulumi. Take a look at some of the API stuff we can do. Dan is a Datadog expert. I'm not. And so he'll kind of, you better, how long have you been working at Datadog, Dan?
I'll give it my best try.
You declined to answer the question?
What?
I said, how long have you worked at Datadog? I actually don't remember even.
Let's talk about Pulumi some more.
Okay. Apparently, this is sensitive information.
No. I've been there 4 years now. 4 years.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Other fun fact. Might as well just jump into stuff because why not? We'll start doing some tech in a minute. But I did promise mirth and merriment and amusement for this. So Other fun things if you care about this. So Frosty is also one of my co-creators, co-hosts of DevOps Party Games, another Twitch stream you can subscribe to, twitch.tv/DevOps Party Games. And we're actually doing a cool one this Saturday for the Kubernetes contributor celebration. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We are here to talk about that. So what I thought we would start is, before we kind of dig into the code, we're going to do a little exploring here. And I'm going to take a look at what we're starting with the so if you were to go to so the Datadog,
it's a web page.
It's a web page. Look at that, right? So this is over on the Pulumi registry at pulumi.com/registry. And if we look at Datadog, so for all the thing about the registry, let's go back real quick. This is cool. This is like all the packages that we have published for all sorts of different things you might want to do, like AWS or GCP or Kubernetes, etc. But in this case, we're going to talk about Datadog. This is kind of a one-stop shop where you're going to find the stuff that you need to get okay. So we do have a question on how to well, I'm going to dig in this. As a question came up in the chat, I don't know that we're going to have the answer for this, but we will follow up. But said looking for examples on how to integrate Datadog and Pulumi Lambda with AWS. So maybe after we dig in a little bit to this, Dan, we'll see if we can think of some ideas.
I think that's a good question. I think
it's a great question.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
We'll check it out.
Sure.
Okay, but so we can kind of see we have a little bit of an overview here. I have one thing that we don't have any how-to guides written for Datadog, and one of the fun things about doing this with Dan is this is giving me some information. I'm going to try to write a couple of these, so hopefully we'll have some of those. But in the meantime, just a couple things. They give a quick little example code. I want to walk through the installation because I've already done this part, just so we're not going to show it because some of this takes a while. So the first thing is Datadog provider is just a package, right? In whatever programming language that you're using. So in this case, it's this Go package. I've already done a Go get zoom in a bit. Okay. Sure, Jeremy. Why not? There you go. How about that? Cool. Okay. But so the trick is the other thing that we did is I set up a trial Datadog account, and you can get a 14-day trial. Did I do that right, Dan? 14 days? You're on mute, Dan.
You know, if you press M, it mutes.
Go figure. I would have thought that M would make you louder, like more loud.
M for more.
Anyway, so you get a 14-day trial. But now there's a couple different ways. So you have to tell Pulumi, your Pulumi program, when you're going to run it, how to talk to Datadog, right? API keys are like passwords. This is also why I'm not doing it live, even though my 14-day trial is going to be over in about a week. So like, I don't know how much you can do if I doxed my Datadog. So there's a couple ways.
Showing off API keys on stream is just bad form in general.
It just makes you look like a rank amateur. Yeah. You can do better than that. So you can do it as an environment variable. But the other thing is that you can also store them as a configuration in your Pulumi program that's encrypted. And that's what I've done. And I'll show you that in a minute. But so what I did is Dan helped me get set up with my Datadog account. That being said, most regular people do not need help from a developer advocate just to set up a Datadog account. It's very easy to do. For everyone else, I apparently did need hand-holding, I guess. Maybe it was just because it was fun.
You're a special friend, Matt. I appreciate you.
I am. I get the white glove DevRel treatment from Datadog. Datadog, I got a Nintendo Switch from Datadog once. That's the best conference swag I ever got.
Get that from reInvent, I guess, right?
Oh no, it was at DevOps Days Philly, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I won it in a drawing.
Yeah. I remember when we were
the only other thing.
Do you remember conferences?
I do. Man. Other fun conference swag story. So ThoughtWorks always gives away at their booth like a really awesome Lego kit. They'll give away like a super awesome Lego kit, and then but in the same raffle they'll give away like a handful of copies of Jez and Dave's book Continuous Delivery, which, by the way, if you haven't read, important book, you should read it. I've read it. Sure. I own it. Also, I have won it from ThoughtWorks 6 times because I always enter because I want the Lego, and every time, not every time, I've never won the Lego, but I will, and I swear, the ThoughtWorks, count everybody up, they'll be like, it's mad, and then I'll give it to somebody, and it's fine. Anyway, the important thing here is when I obtained my API key and my app key from Datadog, I stored them as secrets, so they're encrypted. And then we're going to kind of dig into the API docs and figure out what we want to do. In the meantime, though, let's go back and look at some code and see what we're doing there. So if we go back and take a look, do a little walkthrough of my Pulumi program that I started. So I'll let you know what I've done so far. And the first thing is I have already scaffolded out my Pulumi program. So if you're starting from scratch, you could say Pulumi new and then the language, and it'll create the scaffolding, gets all the pieces and parts in there. I've also already done the go get to pull in the Datadog provider. So if we take a look at, this is the kind of anatomy of my Pulumi program. It's a Go program. So main.go is our entry point. Oh, by the way, this is fun because Dan and I are trying to figure out how like 2 minutes before the stream, I'm like, there's some way that I can stream VS Code into a web browser.
Yeah, let's totally alter the parameters of our entire development environment 2 minutes before we go live. I think that's probably the safest course of action.
That seems right and proper to me. So, okay, cool. And then, and then if we take a look at our kind of Go mod, we'll see, that we're so this AWS SDK, this was from something I was messing around with earlier, but we are bringing in the Datadog and the SDK because when Dan and I were setting this up last week, it was like, well, I need to source this data from somewhere. I need to pre-populate it. Why don't I create a VM and register that and do all this stuff? And that was just too much work. Now, the other thing is our Pulumi.yaml. We have to have some YAML because you can't DevOps without YAML.
It's critical.
So the Pulumi.yaml, this is kind of dull. This is just like kind of the metadata about my overall Pulumi program. It has a name, ddog it. They have the runtime. In this case, it's Go, and I am not clever at all, so we didn't give it a good name. Now, Pulumi has this idea of stacks, and a stack is an instance of your program, maybe with different configuration values. You might think about it as if your program is a dial. So the shape of the dial doesn't change, but maybe what you set the dial to might be different. So a stack is and we start with our dev stack. And this is where I have put in my API key and my app key. This is not them. This is encrypted, right? So this is all encrypted, but it's available to my Pulumi program. And then I don't have to worry about environment variables and stuff. So just to sort of take a little gander of how this works, if you've used Pulumi with other languages like TypeScript or Python, same idea. This is just how Go does imports. So we're bringing in the Datadog provider as Datadog. We have good old Pulumi here, and everything's kind of running in our main function. And what I did is just a little bit of boilerplate just to sort of make sure everything looks right, is creating a user in Datadog. So Dan, what's a user? Why would I need a user? I already have a user. I have a login.
Yep, that's correct.
So why might I want to do this?
Well, no, but I mean, at the end of the day, right? Like you have to be able to tell Datadog kind of who created what, right? There's this notion of attribution for actions within the context of Datadog, right? So yes, you have an API key, and that's sort of the table stakes for interacting with the API, and that's normal, right? But then in Datadog, inside of Datadog, there's this notion of like, accounts and also accountability to a certain degree, right? And that way you can sort of trace back, well, who touched what, when, why, so on and so forth. So here we're saying, we're declaring who is the user, quote unquote,
or a user, because I could have multiple.
You can have multiple users, right? Exactly, right? So you can attach different actions to different users, and then that way, when it's in Datadog, you're looking through your history, like who created the dashboard, who set up this monitor. If you're looking in the event stream and you're seeing these like Pulumi events that are firing off, they could be like assigned to a particular account. So it doesn't have to be a person, right? It could be a role account, for example, right? You could be talking about, a team or, a part of the organization or a product team or something like that. It's pretty wide open. That's just the idea.
Yeah, so we got a question, which I think is interesting. It said, how will this work if you're doing something like, again, we're defining this in our infrastructure as code. And just says, should I enter a tech user or make it configurable? Now, I think what you might do in this case, again, because this is conditionals, when I think about, I would think about this similar to the way I've seen people use Pulumi to configure GitHub, right? So maybe what you might want to do is you would have an infrastructure repo that has your Pulumi program that generates and configures Datadog. And because what we could do is, again, in this case, I'm just pulling in strings, but I could loop over this user object and maybe pull it from a file, right? And so if I want to go ahead and add somebody, I can just do a pull request against the repo that puts in their name and email address. And then my infra code could run inside of my CI/CD and then go and do that. So this case, we're doing a lot of hard coding because we're just creating one user. But we could easily, again, sort of the thing where you're like, hey, I've got some new person, I want to do that. I also imagine Datadog could be connected to some other source of truth other than your infra code. So, this might not be your way. But if you're doing something like that, like
SAML and all this stuff, and then on the infra side too, with this could clearly be tied into some sort of back end where you're pulling in user data, some sort of LDAP translation. At the end of the day, it's just code, right? So there's a lot of opportunities here to build what works for you.
What I want to show here, and the reason I sort of deleted what I had in there already, and we're going to do something a little more interesting in a minute, but this is just giving us a little bit of an illustration of kind of a very simple thing, because creating a user only has a few things. So one thing I want you to know, so again, we're kind of bringing it in. We're saying it's of a type new user because we imported Datadog. So there's a couple different parameters that a user has. One is it needs an email. So, hey, welcome to everybody knowing my personal email now. But, I'm sure you could have figured that out. But also one of the properties of a user is a name. Now, you notice we got this type ahead. I started typing name, and Pulumi and VS Code knew. This is, again, the beautiful part of using a real programming language here is there's no Pulumi. If you go into my VS Code extensions, there's no Pulumi extension happening here. This is all because these are methods, these are properties, these are all parts of that package. And I did have to turn Copilot off just to make sure that was because Copilot actually works pretty well with Pulumi. But so in the name, we know it's a string, and we'll say it's Matt Stratton. And what does it? Aha, nope. See, now this is because it's not actually a string. It needs to be a Pulumi string because Go. But again, if we wanted to know what the name what these things do, it's going to tell us all of the stuff that we want. So it's just normal things. And then out of curiosity, we might be like, so I could actually set it to be disabled. Maybe I want to create a user that is not enabled. I don't want to do that. Now, what will happen is, so this is going to go ahead and create that user. And what I'm also going to do is it might be interesting. So Pulumi has this notion of imports and exports, right? So resources can take imports. They take things that come in like the email, all of this, but it also exports things. And one of the exports of the user object or the user resource is the ID, right? That's the user ID that Datadog knows it as. And we can do fun things with exports. We can pass them around to other Pulumi programs or to other stacks in the same Pulumi program. Or we can also just export them out like to the CLI, which is what I'm going to do here. So I'm exporting out basically a variable. I'm exporting out a value called user ID, and it's going to be whatever the ID is of this thing here. And that'll give me the access to that. So if we were to go ahead now and say we're going to run our Pulumi program, which is we say Pulumi up, and what Pulumi up is going to do is the first thing is it's going to do a preview. It's going to say if I run, it's going to sort of evaluate the program and make sure that I don't have any bad code, or at least not glaringly bad code.
It's going to judge you a little, though, right? I mean,
it's going to judge me a little, but it won't necessarily catch everything, which is why we write tests. And it's going to tell me, hey, if you run this update right now, here's what's going to happen. And in this case, it's going to create the stack because while a stack was defined, it hasn't been created out on the Pulumi side. And it's going to create this user. And if I were to go into details, it's going to actually be very specific about what it's going to do. So we're going to see, this is the URN. This is all, the information disabled is false, set user invitation is true, because some of these are default values, right? So I know exactly what it's going to do. And if I say, sure, go ahead and run that, it's going to reach out to Datadog, run through the API, and in just a minute, I'm actually going to have an email sitting in my inbox inviting me to join this organization.
I really like that it shows the defaults as well, right? Because it's one thing to be like, okay, I know what the properties are of this particular object or whatever, right? And I know I want to set them, but it's totally possible that there's going to be stuff that's happening as a result of defaults that I didn't expect. And so this is going to pop out and go like, this is literally everything that's going to happen. This is every option that's going to be set. This is every value that's going to get touched. And it gives you an opportunity to be like, no, wait, that's a default that I didn't want. Or wait, I don't even know what that is. Stop. I need to look at that a little further.
So, and what I did there while Dan was following up on that is, again, I was able to get that stack output of user ID. So that's my user ID. In this case, not like the most interesting thing in the world, unless, I don't know, maybe it's interesting to you. But that way we were able to get that programmatically. And then one final thing I want to talk about, and then let's dig into doing some other cool stuff. When I talked about where this happened, and you'll see there is this link that says view live, and this is on the Pulumi service. So Pulumi needs some way to understand the state of your infrastructure, because you're telling Pulumi, for my stuff, I want my stuff to look like this, right? So Pulumi kind of has to know what it looks like or what it doesn't look like. And sorry, good call. Let me get rid of that. We don't need to have that anymore. There you go. Oh, now it's hidden behind my name.
Just hit enter again, man. You're good.
There you go.
Yeah, nice.
Hey, look, there it is. Streaming is hard. Okay. Anyway, thanks, Paul. You got there. Yeah. Anywho, you have to have somewhere to store the state, and there's a bunch of, and you can, if you go to Pulumi, if you go to our docs, there's a bunch of stuff that will be more in depth. But just to know, you can store it in all sorts of different, what we call them, backends. If you want to stick it in blob storage on Azure, you can put it in S3 bucket. You could store it locally if you want. Really, the easiest way is to use the Pulumi service, which is free for individuals. That's our SaaS. And so what is happening there is when it's running out and blah, 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 that's happening. Cool. Let's, we're going to flip over and look at the API docs again. And I want to, maybe, and even actually before we do that, what is wrong with me?
That's a really good question.
Don't say anything, Jeremy.
I mean, I didn't want to say
what
nothing.
What window is that?
We kind of were all asking the same question.
Twitch? Oh, it's this one. Here we go. Okay.
See, this is where if we were on like a different Twitch that we often are on together, where I would just have to like talk about the upcoming game or like, put in some DevOps related joke or something.
You could do that.
Can I do that? Is that okay?
Now,
is that kosher?
Okay.
Can I be the color commentator?
Hey, let's do it. Let's do a little data. Let's just take a look at a couple things here. So
zoom in again
this is what?
Zoom in again, Matt. Zoom in.
There you go. Zoomed in. Okay. So this is Datadog. I am 33% done setting up. I got news for you. That's about as far as I'm going to go. We have one host going in. Do we want to take a minute before we go configure? I think what we were going to do was maybe configure a monitor, but should we talk about like what a monitor would be and maybe look at one and then make one by hand?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Yeah. I mean,
I mean, to be honest, Dan knows more about my seed data than I do because he gave me some Docker thing to run to make it happen. So,
yeah. So, fun fact, that's just UUID gen, right?
Yeah.
It's all good. Rolls off the tongue though, eh? Nin 650 radada. But so yeah, so let's go take a look. Obviously, you can see here there's a lot of stuff along the column on the left-hand side. And as I mentioned earlier, this is all sort of the different things that are in there. I didn't even talk about all of them, right? I didn't even mention CI/CD. I didn't even mention APM. Like, there's a whole bunch of good stuff in there, right? And it would take. I mean, we have to be on a full day long stream just to sort of dive into all this stuff. Ain't nobody got that kind of time. So we thought, what can we kind of show off that's going to be relevant to a fairly broad group of people, that's not going to require a ton of a priori knowledge to get value out of. And the one thing that everybody, I think, can relate to is when something goes wrong, a computer tells you about it. Right? So that's what a monitor is. So let's go take a look at that. You can see other things under the monitors menu there, though. There's like, stuff dealing with SLOs and stuff dealing with incidents. Like, there's a whole incident management product built in there. There's an SLO product that's built in there. So, stuff we could look at later maybe, but we'll talk about, monitors. So a default installation, out of the box Datadog, you get one monitor, and that's your NTP monitor. And what that is making sure that every machine, or for values of machine, everywhere that the agent is running, this little Go program that collects some system data, right, and feeds it up to Datadog, and it's got statsd built in and a little Python parser and stuff. Wherever that's running, it's making sure that the clock sync for that machine, and I'm putting this in big old quotes, right, because what does that word even mean now? That machine doesn't have too much skew. I've said it before, and I'll say again on stage and on camera. Accurately measuring time is the single most important thing you can do as a computer engineer, right? Nothing else will work if time isn't being measured at least somewhat accurately, right? So that's why we put that out of the box. We say this has to go, and we have to have this alert, because if that doesn't work, then it doesn't matter what the hell else you do, right?
That's fair.
Yeah. So you can see here that this is what we call a custom check. It's a custom check because it's a check that was generated, right? And if we scroll up a little bit more, we can actually see, we see the ID that was created. In this case, it's an internal ID. So boom, right? When it was created by us for you. Normally, it would have, for example, that user that was created earlier when Matt showed the Pulumi code, or the Go code that was calling, Pulumi functions, right? And here we also see that there's a query, so you can actually see the query. Now, this is going to be important for us in a moment. You actually be able to see the raw query. There's a little message describing what it does. This is all configurable by the practitioner, right? Either directly in the web interface, or via some sort of infrastructure as code mechanism, for example, right? And it's markdown, so you can do all sorts of stuff in there. You can
spoilers.
You can import dashboards. You can keep it live. It's actually really cool. And if we scroll down, you can just see that the history of it's all green because we've got our clock synced, right? Which is really nice. And then whatever kind of events, and Watchdog is just our basically anomaly detector. So if we had like 1,000 hosts and one of them was off, Watchdog would tell us, for example.
Cool. All right, so let's make an interesting monitor.
Yeah.
Or a monitor with our very exciting Docker Compose. Yes. So we have this app that's been running for sort of the last few days on my other laptop in a Docker container, generating fake traffic and reporting to Datadog. So, and the reason I don't know this app, but this is also what that Dan does demos with, so you might know a good monitor to pick.
You'd think that.
Okay, well, should we just make one up? All right, yeah, so what do we do? So let's create a monitor by hand.
Create a monitor by hand, exactly. That's the first thing we'll do, is just to show kind of what the manual process there looks like and kind of walk through it. So right from there, you can see there's a new monitor. We'll click on that. Cool. And there's a bunch of different sort of monitor types, as you can imagine, right? This isn't, Nagios or whatever, where it's just like, I don't know, is it up, is it down, right? Although we do have an up-down, that's the host check, right? There's metrics, anomaly checks, it's forecasting, network checks, RUM, all sorts of stuff. And the one at the very bottom, which I don't think we're going to look at, but I think it's important to notice, you can import them directly from JSON. So it means if you've got, like, if you're migrating monitors over from another project or something like that, and you literally just dump them out as JSON and re-import them, doing that by hand, do it once to see how it works, and then use automation. Right? So you get a little hint here that everything that we're about to look at, right, is at the end of the day, it's just code, it's just configuration, it's in many cases just JSON that we can spit out. And once you have a JSON blob, you can do a lot with it, right? So here, for example, a very, very simple one would be a host check, right? Okay. So you check to see if one or more hosts is reporting. So you can, look at the hosts. Docker Desktop's the only one. That's really important because it's the only one that's running. So, right? That's the check. You can check for individual hosts. You can check for clusters or values of, right? And there's a whole sort of, way of thinking about machines and how they work together, right? And then if you're checking for clusters, they could be broken down by groups. We're not doing that. Notify if data is missing for more than 2 minutes because the host could be up, but if it's not reporting, that's a different problem. You probably want to know about that. Right.
By the way, you can't notify me yet because I did not accept the invitation to. That's why you're only seeing the name that Jeremy has decided he's referring to me as now.
Good old,
and then
good old 96 for data. But yeah. Right. And that there are situations where you're going to have hosts that go down, and they go down in ways you expect. And you expect them to come back up later, and you can just go, look, it's going to go down. I know it's going to go down. It goes down friggin' every night. I don't care.
I wrote the code. It's
you know what happen. I mean? Just let it come back on its own. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then here's the part where I said that you can sort of just write kind of whatever you want. So, you have to give it a name where it says example monitor name. This is actually super important. You don't have to put anything in the message, but you do have to give it a name. And, I like you too, Maddie. That's nice. And then here it's, as you can see, it sort of looks like a Slack toolbar, right? It's because it's got a markdown-ish thing going on in there. You could put links to your runbook, so you could put images, some sort of a Doge meme, something like that, right? Add your tags on there, get a priority, et cetera, et cetera. This is all stuff that would make more sense if we had a much larger environment with a lot more stuff set up, right? Oh yeah. Yeah, we got to get in on that.
That's the runbook.
Definitely got to get on that cake action, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, so here we could give it a save, right? And then look at that. We have a monitor. So not that exciting. Host up, down.
Should we look
right?
But we understand the concepts of a monitor that we want to now create.
Exactly.
One.
So if we scroll down to the bottom of this page,
yes,
we see here something called export monitor. Well, I want you to take a look on that. We click export monitor. Boom. What do we get? What do we get?
Some JSON.
It's a JSON blob.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, look at that.
I thought maybe it was popping up where you couldn't see it.
Yeah, so that's a JSON blob. And here we go. Okay, great. Right? I can take and I can copy pasta this somewhere, and then they can munge it and do whatever needs to be done. And that's ultimately probably what we'll end up doing to a certain degree the first time around. But spoilers, you wouldn't do this in production. What you would do is you would just do this programmatically if you needed to. Right? You just hit up the API and go, give me this JSON blob, and it would feed it back to you. Right?
The other thing that we're going to do is the information that's in here, we're going to add that to the resource, to the monitor resource that we create. So like to know what the query is and stuff when we do this in Pulumi. So I'm going to just sort of keep this here. Now, we'll change a couple things. So it'll create a new monitor that's basically the same, but we'll give it a different name and stuff. So should we take a look at how to hit it with the API?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So if we take a look at the API docs here for the Datadog provider, this is a monitor. Okay. So, and you can see we've got the docs in all the different languages, to sort of see how some example usage in TypeScript, Python. We're in Go. So if we look at our example, this should look fairly similar to the output that was in that JSON. It's not in JSON, but these are the types of parameters, these types of properties that a monitor has. And if we were to take a look, these are what those properties. So it has a message, right? Which is that whole thing about giving me cake.
Yep. Which should basically be boilerplate for every alert, really.
It really should be, right? And then we have this query, right? And then so the query, again, we can pull from that. We have the type, and again, all these that are asterisk are going to be required. So let's take a look, and I'm going to flip back over to my VS Code, and we're going to create ourselves. We're going to create ourselves a monitor. Okay, so we have our user. Nobody cares, but that's fine. So let's go ahead now, and we are going to create a new monitor. Now, because this is Go, if I were to do something like this,
because this is
it's
Go,
going to eventually,
because needlessly complicated.
You can't see it. Oh, so you can't see what I'm doing. It's going to complain because I'm giving the object a name. I'm giving this thing a name that I'm never going to use. The reason, so we can instead we can just say we're creating a monitor, but the object doesn't actually need a name. Okay, so this is a Datadog, and it's a new monitor. Okay, and then that's in the context. We're going to call it Datadog because he's listening. And then we're going to give it the Datadog monitor. Oops. Monitor. What's why? I can't spell. There we go. Datadog monitor args. I'm trying to figure out what's what does it not? Oh, there we go.
So Jer's like, he needs a monitor, and I'm like, you can't stop, Jer. I can only hope to contain him.
Yeah. Okay. So first we can set an escalation message. So we're gonna say this is gonna be a Pulumi.string, and it's gonna be Jeremy wake up. Okay. You would probably give it something like message to PagerDuty or something like that, right? Okay. Include tags. Now, I don't think we were using tags.
No.
In ours before. So we're gonna not do that. We don't need that. That's not required. But I'm sort of looking at what we had. So it needs a name. Now that name that we gave it was this is the name of the object is Datadog, but then the actual name,
like the title of the thing, if you will.
This is the title is Datadog is less cool.
So while Maddie's typing that out, we mentioned that we don't have any tags, which is not like what we're doing here. We're just messing around and whatever. I'm drinking wine and we're having a good time. But in the real world, you're probably still drinking wine and having a good time, but you're also adding tags, right? You really should be tagging your stuff. You're getting a bunch of tags for free. Basically, if you're deploying to sort of a cloud infrastructure, your cloud provider is going to have like, look, here's tags, like here's what region you're in, or stuff like this, and that's normal. And then if you have been using any sort of infrastructure as code platform for more than a few minutes, you've encountered this idea of tags, and you thought like, oh, I don't know, maybe I want to deploy like what is the name of the app or something, right? So in Datadog, and it's a little bit specific to Datadog, we have this thing called unified service tagging. And there's 3 tags, which are reserved in this model. And that's env, environment, service, and version, right? So these 3 are like reserved words. So if you're thinking to yourself, I like the word version, or I like the word service, and I've already got my own definition for what these things are, in Datadog, those 3 are reserved. And they're reserved because, as I said, they're part of this unified service tagging model that glues basically the entire product spectrum together. So if you are like deploying your stuff, and you have no other tags at all except these 3, all of a sudden it unlocks a whole bunch of doors in Datadog where you like all of your logs are suddenly connected to all of your traces, which are suddenly all connected to your events, which are suddenly all connected to your metrics. and it works fairly well out of the box, which is actually pretty cool. But again, those are 3 reserved words. So hopefully you're not already using them.
So I want to address something. So Tenwit brought up and he said, but Pulumi auto naming. So remember, I said that this this object, this monitor we're creating within Pulumi is its monitor is going to be named. So the actual monitor, object wise, is going to be called Datadog with an identifier after it. Okay, so that's to help us not have namespace collisions of stuff. So but it's and the way it works in Datadog will be interesting. We'll have to look at the details of how this comes in. We can override that, but the name of the monitor is really more of just a string, right? That doesn't actually even have to be unique, probably within Datadog. The name value, right?
No, it
name.
Should be. Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be. Like, name here is just attached to the.
It's more of a title.
It's the name of the object, right?
Yeah. Well, which is
the
instantiation
of ultimately, right? Because this is code that we're talking about here, right? So like, each instantiation is going to be treated as its own, its own thing, right? So that doesn't have to be unique in that context. It just becomes a property of the object.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. I'm looking at a couple of the other things that we set. Notify audit is false. We didn't. What does that actually mean, though? Dan,
I'm sorry. What was notify that? Audit. I was busy talking to Jared.
Notify audit.
What's going on?
Notify audit.
Notify audit.
I assume that's some other Datadog feature.
It is another Datadog feature, and you put me on the spot. I could guess what that is for, but I don't want to bullshit on stream.
That's totally fine. Let's see. We also but it was I saw that in the JSON, so we wanted to do it. Let's do, but we definitely need the query. So this one we're going to cheat audit. And we're going to copy.
I'm just going to look that up for you while you're typing out, because now I'm curious. Because there's this idea of, like, for example, audit events, like SLO audit events, right? And I'm wondering if it's connected to that. It's just that string in this context, it's like a property string, and I'm not sure exactly what it's referring to, so I'm just going to look it up.
I am going to go back here because I don't want this in the JSON.
Oh man, dead air.
No, I know. What was
stuff,
the?
Right?
Yeah. No, I was trying to find. I thought I saw something in Datadog that, besides just dumping out the JSON, that it would just give me the query not in JSON. Because
you can see that.
Why don't I? Well, it shouldn't matter. This should still be right.
So it's right in that. When you look in the Datadog interface, you can actually see the query right in the page, but without the string interpolation.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to.
Need more wine.
Oh, there it is. I found it. But I still think I need it because this is inside a Pulumi string. So that's because there's strings in that. Okay. Looking at a couple other things that we might want to add to here. We have our query. Oops. Trying to. And it needs a type. Okay. And this was if I recall correctly.
You know what's funny? If you search for Datadog notify audit, the second link is the Pulumi docs.
Oh, there you go.
So what's funny? I'm not 100% sure what that property is referring to. It could refer to a couple different things. So I'm going to make a note of that because now I'm actually quite curious. Suffice it to say, I'm pretty familiar with our monitors, right? As a recovering system administrator, so whatever it is, it's obscure. I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay, so let's see here. Again, if we look at our docs, really the only required are the message. We have a message, right? The name, it has a name, it has a query, and it has a type. So that should get us everywhere we need to go for this monitor. So I'd say let's go ahead and run our Pulumi program, and then we'll go take a quick look back at Datadog. And see if it did what it was supposed to do.
So as before, this is going to give us like an opportunity to review.
Oh, something's.
Oh, you've been judged.
Host monitors must. Okay. Host monitors must notify and no data. Okay. So we have to set the notify no data to false. So notify no data. I mean, we have to set it to something. I'm going to set it to false because I don't give a shit. But this is also why we have the
oh, no, but it says host monitors must notify on no data. So you have to set it to true.
Oh, I bet you that would make a lot of sense because I bet you false is the default. You're much better at reading things than I am.
Man,
okay.
You're the one who's English is their first language.
The last field. Okay, wait, what is it not like? So this is all valid. So this is Datadog is basically Datadog's API is going and saying you're trying to make a monitor, Maddie, and you're doing a really bad job of it. So that's actually okay. So now it's telling us, okay, last field should be larger or equal to max threshold defined in monitor options. So I'm going to actually go back and just make these the way that they were in. I was just making them up, but the ones that we had warning.
I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, in fact, those are all like one. In fact, right?
They were. I was just fussing around with them
because it's pretty Boolean, right? Like either the host is up or it's not.
Yeah.
Right. There's not really like different.
Right. Threshold. Okay. You know why? Because in the sample docs, it's not a host monitor; it's a metric monitor. So
exactly.
Okay. So let's take a look here. Let's look at our details. Okay, it's going to have a name, right? It has a URN. So I think Tenwood. I think. Okay, can you share the links? Let me show you what I'm. That's a good point.
Yeah. So as far as that, while Maddie's grabbing the links, that you can see that query line there was pulled directly from the JSON, right? So it's got the interpolation built into it, which is those slashes to say don't interpret this. This is part of the string. It's not part of the JSON. I'm very curious to see what will happen when you run this.
Yeah, because I think that's what I was just thinking. Because I think it should be. Yeah, I don't know why does it even want those? It should actually be like this. Probably, we probably don't need it, right?
Well, wherever there's quotes.
Well, see, that's the thing because there are, but I'm passing but we needed it for that to be able to work inside of Pulumi, and our example actually doesn't have any values that would have quotes in.
Well, no, but look at that first one, right? Datadog agent up.
Well, it shouldn't have needed.
But no, but Datadog agent up in this case is a metric group that you're iterating over. There's not such a thing as Datadog agent up over. That's not a metric, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So in that case, you actually do need the.
Well, let's see what happens.
Yeah. I have never tried to do this with Go, so. I mean, the worst that will happen is it won't work like we expect, and then we'll fix it, right? Like it's not a big deal.
Oh, thank you, Jacob. Jacob says Datadog and Pulumi is two favorite.
Oh, right on. Thanks, Jacob.
Okay, so it seems
hit me up on Twitter. We'll get some swaggo to you, man.
Yeah. Okay. Let's flip on over. Let's see how we did. Monitors.
Want to share your screen there, buddy?
Yeah, I had to turn it back on. I hate this thing.
There you go.
What do we have? Hey! And I presume no data because
it's got to.
I mean, know why.
It's got to actually collect.
We haven't given it any.
We have
any time to.
The whole thing about stats is that you need more than one data point.
Oh,
right?
Okay. And look, the query looks like it
looked actually quite good. Right. And as you can see here, right, it was emitted as an event.
Oh, here we go. If this is
this is actually really cool. Oh, light just turned off. That was weird. So this is actually really neat because it was emitted as an event, right? So when Pulumi was like, "Hey, we're going to do a thing," right? And it, because it was using the Datadog API, it registered that as an event. And you think to yourself, well, yeah, it's like an event. But the thing is events is its own sort of mechanism inside of Datadog. You can go and see like event streams, right? Like, of what's happening with your infrastructure. And then you can actually make monitors on events. So say, for example, you did a Pulumi run to deploy a new stack. You could actually have a monitor fire off on that. You could actually have, for example, dashboards where you're tracking certain metrics against certain events, right? So you could go like, okay, we've Pulumi upped a stack because we're doing like some I don't know, canary deployment, some A/B testing, and we actually want to know exactly when that happened versus, okay, are the numbers going up or are the numbers going down, for example, right? So that's cool.
So I do need to point this out. So this is the Datadog Pulumi provider. Now this is one of the confusions about Pulumi. Sometimes people think Pulumi runs Terraform under the hood. It doesn't, but our providers are built according to the schema, the API schema that's created by that Terraform is already mapped. Which means every now and again there are a few little instances of the word Terraform floating around. And as Tenwood pointed out, you can see that it actually says that the origin client was the Terraform provider when it really came from Pulumi. That's one of the things I've been trying to figure out a better way to sort of handle how we can go from that. But a lot of that comes from because that's coming from the hashes schema definition that they created. So really the real way to solve this is just to go write a native provider for Datadog.
Matt.
Yeah, I'll get right on that. Yeah, I'll get right on that. But it works perfectly fine. So if we wanted to sort of go back and just to kind of, I guess, prove a point, because I sure do like proving points. If we were to go back in and say like, okay, you know what, this is actually not useful. To call it Jeremy as but maybe we might call it the this is called the make sure Jeremy does work, right?
Share the screen there, bud,
so oh geez Louise. Okay, there we go. So what I did there is I just changed this, right? I gave it a new name. So then if we were to go, this is just pretty straightforward item potency here, but if I run a Pulumi up now, we're going to see that it's going to change the monitor. And again, if we were to look at the details, we'll see what it diffed, right? It's going to show us this is.
Oh, hey, that's pretty cool. So I actually have not seen this before, Matt, right? Like when you were showing me a little bit, beforehand, like, oh, this is what, Pulumi and this is what it does and stuff like this. And I was like, oh yeah, like that works pretty cool. But this is new for me. I hadn't seen this output, before. And I like that it actually shows you not only that something has changed, which is what we're seeing here, right? That there's an element here. We see that there's something that's changed. But if we scroll down, we can actually see what it changed from and to. That's really nice.
It's very helpful, right? And then the other thing is, again, if you were to go to this link here, and I'm going to bop over to my browser so you can see what...
You should just be able to click on it, though, no way?
No, I wanted it had to open in a specific browser window so that I could share it. So if I go and I share now, if we take a look at this stuff, so a lot of this is the stuff that we were seeing in the CLI, but this is my Datadog stack, so we can see. Remember, there was the output that I kicked out, so I have that available here. But then, because this is a configuration value that is encrypted, I can't actually see it. And this is metadata. Nobody cares about that. But here's sort of some of the fun stuff,
quick
right?
question,
Activity
that output
every time
that you output there, could you then use that output like as another step, as another phase of
Yep.
Pulumi?
It could be a whole other stack, right? And I could pass it. I can pass it to another stack, to another program.
Right. So if you had some sort of like, for example, serial deployment process where like one thing had to go before another thing could go, which is not an uncommon pattern, that would be a possibility.
Absolutely.
Cool.
We can see activity. So this was the preview that I just ran, which it didn't do anything, but we're going to see everything that we just saw in the console, right? We can see my diff, we can see all that stuff. Nobody needs to follow you on Twitter right now, so we can hide that. Okay.
Everybody should follow me on Twitter.
And then this
Twitter feed is very reasonable.
Yeah. Well, no, so earlier, Tenwit mentioned the resource graph. Now, this is a very simple resource graph because we only have 2 resources. Although I'm curious if I have any projects that let me see. This is real quick, as long as I'm poking around.
Well, as long as Matt's poking around, maybe with the resource graph, right? So it's really simple, and sometimes we have a really simple thing. You think to yourself, like, I don't understand the value proposition there. And they can become much more complex. And once they become much more complex, you look at it and you go, this is nonsense. I don't understand the value proposition there. So for anybody who's, looking at the stream, watching the stream, has ever looked at, sort of these network maps or these, something
there you
complex,
go.
and you're thinking to yourself, like, why is this useful? Like, what possible information could I get from this? And I can tell you, again, as someone who's had to step through a lot of code, who's had to debug, a lot of problems. It's not so much that you're going to be looking at this every day, because you're not. You really, really aren't. What's really nice is really when you're trying to learn something, right? If you're encountering new stacks for the first time, you're encountering new, software the first time, and you've got some sort of like, visual code, or code, visualization tool and whatnot, right? So you see how things are connected. It becomes a really powerful learning tool. And I think that is very interesting. And everything that's a powerful learning tool can also be a powerful debugging tool. And it's cool that that's built into Pulumi, right? Because you think to yourself, especially, I just brought up this idea of, serialized deployments and one thing leading to another, and how are these things connected? So you hit a button and you walk away for 5 minutes and you come back and it's on fire and Datadog is sending you alerts and you're like, why is this happening? Right? Go and you can take a look at that resource graph and actually sort of walk through the connections between these things and then go boom right there. That's actually quite powerful, right? It's, if you're a person who has the use of one or more eyes, being able to look at how things are connected can be a really powerful way to ingest complex data sets, right?
Very true, very true. And Tenwit in the chat just says, explaining relationships between real resources to enterprise architects. So these resource graphs are really helpful for that kind of thing. So we're coming up to our end here. The last thing that I'm going to do, because I want to clean up after myself, although I don't especially need to now, because Datadog is going to clean up after me by turning off my account in a week. And it's not like I pay per monitor or something.
To be clear, the account does not disappear. Right? Like, say, you're playing around with stuff for like, 2 weeks, and you're like, oh, this is a project, you kind of put it aside, or you go on vacation, or who knows what happens, right? Anything can happen. And you think to yourself, oh no, all that work that I did in my Sandbox account, it's gone. It's not gone. It is all still there. It stays there for a good long time. We can fire that back up for you whenever you want.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Maybe another way to put it is, I don't really care about cleaning up, because it's not like y'all have my credit card number.
Fair enough.
So it's okay.
But I have your credit card number. But,
Yes, that's true. You actually probably do. So if I say Pulumi destroy, what this is going to do is it's going to say any of the resources that were created by this Pulumi program, it's going to get rid of them. So we can see it says it's got 3 things to delete. It's going to delete Datadog. It's too bad Jeremy's not on anymore, because they had an amazing troll to say, I've always wanted to be able to delete Jeremy. It's going to delete that user that we created. It should be Pulumi Smash. I might alias Pulumi Smash to Pulumi Destroy -Y. I did used to have Pulumi YOLO alias to Pulumi Up -Y. but Pulumi Chomp. Yep. All right. So we're going to go ahead and delete these 3 things. It's going to get rid of the stack. But what it's not going to get rid of is that monitor that we created by hand, because Pulumi didn't do that, right? So that's still there. And then if I want to just say, you know what, I am completely done with everything. I don't even want that. So it says, like it says, a history and configuration is still here. So if I were to go, even though I deleted those resources, if I go back into the console, I can still see all of that stuff. But if I'm like, you know what, this is just Dunzo McDunzo, I can go ahead and delete the stack. Can't delete Slack. Sometimes you want to. Pulumi destroy. No, like for real though. Anyway, cool. By the way, if you like doing Go stuff with Pulumi, may I invite you to tune in same time next week. My colleague Rawcode, David Flanagan, is going to be joining me. I don't know exactly what we're going to do, but because it's David, clearly we are going to be talking about Go, and it's going to probably be more nerdy and more technical than any of the streams I've done because, again, it's Rawcode. Hi, Layla. Thank you for popping in just in time for me and Dan. Where might people want to like learn more Datadog? Are there Datadog streams or videos or like would you guys do streaming?
Yeah, no. Probably we'll start next year.
Okay, so
but you know what?
So
honestly,
tune in next year.
Check out learn.datadoghq.com. I posted the link on the Twitch there. Learn.datadoghq.com. That's our whole like self-directed learning center. You can learn all about a whole bunch of stuff that's not even necessarily directly to Datadog. Like you're interested in Kubernetes, then take our monitoring Kubernetes self-directed learning course. It's free. You'll learn a ton of stuff about Kubernetes and also how to monitor it, right? So definitely go check that out. Learn.datadoghq.com. Docs.datadoghq.com is written by our extremely competent documentation team. And every once in a while, they let me review some of their documentation, which is really cool. It makes me feel important. And then, just check out my Twitter feed. Follow me on Twitter. I do a lot of talks and a lot of streams and things like this. So, hit me up if you want to talk shop. Datadog's cool, but I'm also into things that aren't necessarily Datadog, like DevOps, and I really like geography and wine. So yeah, if you like those things, HMU, as the kids say.
That's right. And until next time, we will see you all on the